Tonight's shiur, as always, Elul Nishmat Avi Mari Dover Mary Reuben Halevi Imi Marti Rachel Baharav Michael. And tonight we are. Somebody's got a lot of noise going on in the background. If you can please mute. Very noisy, somebody. So please. Okay, tonight's shiur is parshat Shoftim. So let's go right to the sources here, and where? Okay. Okay. The parsha of Shoftim, as its name implies, deals with judges, justice, laws in the Torah that, again, we would theoretically, some of these would be laws that we would naturally have to have for a society to exist, and yet they're in the Torah specifically because some of them are not necessarily things the way we would logically expect them to be, and yet many of them are virtually straightforward logic that would be required in any society. So the parsha begins with this concept of Shoftim. We have to have judges, we have to have a law system, because without a law system, we cannot have mishpat, we cannot have justice. And interestingly enough, our parsha connects the word mishpat to tzedek.
Excuse me,
now,
but somebody's
oftentimes
audio
we
is
think
on.
of tzedek clearly as something righteous, as something proper. Later on, we're going to see a similar concept of yasita hayashar. We have to do that which is upright. All of these are important concepts in the Torah, and the concept clearly of justice and
Aaron, somebody's audio is on.
hold on a second. Wait a minute. 1 second. Let's go back for a minute. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Okay, let's do that. All right. Let's go screen share. Okay, is that better? Can everybody hear me? Okay, I hope everybody can hear me because I can't hear you because I think everybody is muted. So I hope you can all hear me.
Everybody, that's great. Much better. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so these two concepts, twin concepts of mishpat and tzedek, as you see from the highlighted words in the first few psukim, are the two themes of the parasha, that we cannot have justice without righteousness, we cannot have righteousness without justice. The two are intertwined, and as proof, in case we needed it, I'm going to quote a verse from Bereshit, back when Hashem is about to destroy the city of Sodom, and he consults, if you will, with Avram about this destruction. The reason given there in Pasuk Yutet is why is Avram going to be such a great nation? Because Hashem says, Ki yadativ, I know, Lamana sheyitzavet banav et beito acharav, that Avram is going to command his children and his household after him. Vishamru derech Hashem, they will observe the path of Hashem. And what is the path of Hashem? Lasot tzedakah mishpat, to do righteousness and justice. Again, exactly what we have in the beginning of our parsha, tzedakah, mishpat, mishpat, tzedek, same exact words. And it is only through tzedakah and mishpat that Hashem says, Laman avi Hashem al Avram eit asher diber alav. In order for Hashem to be able to fulfill the promises he's made to Abraham, Avram has to be able to teach his household about these concepts of tzedakah mishpat. Similarly, and I didn't bring the pasuk down, we have in the opening chapter of Yeshayahu, which describes the Churban, it says, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh v'shaveh b'tzedakah. Tzion will be redeemed through mishpat, and it will be, the returnees will come through tzedakah. So again, these two principles of mishpat and tzedek, tzedakah, mishpat, throughout the Tanakh, throughout our communications from Hashem with us, form the cornerstone, the foundation of a Jewish society. There must be mishpat, there must be tzedek. Now, one of the themes that we're going to see in the parsha of Shoftim, in addition to this concept of tzedek, of righteousness and justice, is the importance of and the value of human life. And it's going to be very, very strangely contrasted between the concepts, the principles of tzedek and mishpat and sanctity of human life, and the importance of protecting and defending human life. So I'm going to start with a number of different sources. First, of course, Parshat Noach, where why is it that human life is so important? And why is it that if human life is so important that we have to have capital punishment because of the concept of shofech dam hadam badam damo yishafech? Because when a person takes another human life, the courts have a responsibility to punish the perpetrator by, in the worst case, if there is appropriate evidence and appropriate willful premeditation, by taking the perpetrator's life, because God has told us, and he tells Noach, this, by the way, is in Parshat Noach to all of humanity, not just to the Jewish people, the concept of sanctity of human life, because we are all created, every single individual, no matter who they are, no matter how righteous they are or how non-righteous they are, or not yet righteous they might be, is created in the image of God, and therefore we have to defend every life. We have to treat every life as being in the image of God until and unless that person does something that causes them to forfeit that image of God. And one of those, and now it's interesting because our parsha is going to begin with and go through, as we go through the parsha, we're going to find a number of cases which warrant capital punishment. In other words, if capital punishment is warranted by the Torah, it means that the person has done an act that has removed them from this concept of Tzelem Elokim. They have become so distant from God that their godliness is no longer recognizable. And we're going to begin with a whole lot of those. If you look through the parsha, we find, for example, one of those is Avodah Zarah, a person who worships idols. If we look in the opening chapter or the opening verses of this week's parsha, we find that a person who a person who goes and worships idols, and bows down to them, anything that is not God, that is worshipped as a God, if we find out about it, this carries a capital punishment. It was kaltam ba'avonim mametu. We are told that if the evidence is proper, the court has the obligation to put them to death through stoning. Again, however, evidentiary rules are rather strict in terms, especially in terms of capital cases, to the extent that the Gemara in Makot says that a court that carries out capital punishment once in 7 years is considered a murderous court, because the threshold of evidence required for a court to execute someone was so high. As the pasuk immediately follows in verse 6, in order for a court to carry out a capital punishment sentence, there have to be 2 eyewitnesses to the actual fact, to the actual event that is being the alleged perpetrator is accused of doing. They have to also, if we go through the laws, they have to have warned him. But if their evidence is there, they do carry out capital punishment. Again, as I said, the standard of evidence was very high. The immediate parsha or one of the parashot that follows is the law of the king, and the king is entitled or is required to maintain law and order, and is given extrajudicial powers to be able to do that. So even though courts are bound by the rules of evidence, the king is not necessarily bound by those same requirements and can execute people or carry out judgment in an extrajudicial manner when the circumstances require it. Okay, so all of these things, again, are to set the balance that the justice system has to achieve. We have an obligation, again, that we need to maintain a society where people can live, can thrive. As we talked about last week, we try to have a society where everyone can participate. But in order to do that, we need to maintain rules of law. So having said that, we also find other cases where, again, the punishments are, capital punishment is carried out. In some cases, it seems almost harsh to us, and yet that is what the Torah demands. The best example is the case of what is called Zakein Mamre, an elder who rebels. Because of the necessary authority vested in the Sanhedrin, we are told, a person who rebels against the authority of the court in the most extreme case, again, carries a capital punishment sentence if certain circumstances are met for rebelling against the authority of the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim. Again, this is not something that was carried out on a regular basis. It was something that was a very, very, very limited case when this would be carried out. Similarly, next week, we're going to read about other capital cases such as the Ben Sorer or Morer, the rebellious son. Again, the Torah's intent is not that we should be killing people left and right. It is to establish parameters that are so disastrous for a Jewish society that they have to be answered by capital punishment. So each of these cases is an individual case, but it's a critical component of us determining the thresholds that are required for a Jewish society to operate. And specifically in the cases of the courts, and specifically in cases of the authority of the king, all of these are necessary functions for a Torah society to operate. Similarly, we have, again, another case later on, also in our parsha, which describes a Navi Sheker, who also carries a capital punishment. So there are two types of Navi'im who, again, deserve capital punishment. One is a Navi who says that he has received prophecy from Hashem when he hasn't received prophecy from Hashem. Such a Navi has to be put to death. Again, if the parameters are met and if the conditions are right by the court, because the Navi is, again, a critical component of the Jewish society, of our ability to understand what it is that Hashem requires of us and to correct us when we are off on the wrong path. If the Navi is not directing us in the path of Hashem, or if the Navi is if a Navi chooses to say a nevuah in the name of some idol or some other God, something other than Hashem, again, both of those, whether it's the Navi who is relating a nevuah that he did not receive, or a Navi who is relating a nevuah, even when he did receive in the name of something other than God, those are both capital punishments, because we have to have authentic Nevi'im. We have to be able to trust that the Nevi'im are authentic. Therefore, when we find a Navi who is not an authentic Navi and claiming to be an authentic Navi, then we have to, again, remove him from the society, because we cannot build a society with that involved in the society. The Torah, of course, then continues by giving us how to know that the Navi is not telling the truth, is not appropriate, and the guidelines for making sure that that happens. So again, if we look at all of these things, we seem to say that, gee, there are lots of things that carry capital punishment. Now, interestingly enough, we also have in this week's parsha one of the laws of war, that when we are fighting a battle against a city and it chooses to fight against us, if it goes to fight against us, and we have to surround it, when we follow Hashem's path, Hashem will give our enemies into our hands. Again, we have an obligation when we conquer a city to destroy all of the male inhabitants. Again, seems by today's standards very harsh, but this is what the Torah expects of us, that if we are to conquer a city, we have to destroy all the inhabitants, because if otherwise, they will teach us inappropriate things. They will cause us to stray from Hashem. This, by the way, only applies to cities that are not in the original Eretz Yisrael, that have the 7 Amim, but in the array, in these Canaanite cities that we are conquering, that form the basis of our inheritance, we are not allowed to allow anybody to live, male and female. We have to destroy everybody. So again, if we think and we look at all of these things that I've mentioned so far, we seem to say exactly the opposite of what I just said. Where's the sanctity of human life? Where is this? Where Hashem is telling us, destroy the whole city, destroy all of the idolaters. Why is this not in contradiction to what I said at the beginning? Because again, Hashem gives us a specific reason. The key component that we are trying to set up is a just society that follows the principles of Hashem. The people who lived in these cities that were being conquered did not follow in the path of Hashem. That was why we were fighting against them. They were idolaters. They were not observing the 7 Noahide commands. They did not acknowledge God, and that is why we have to destroy them, because they will lead us astray. So we might think that, wait a minute, I just told you, as we just talked about the sanctity of human life, we should let all these people live. The Torah tells us no, that we cannot let idolaters live in our midst. If they want to move far, far away, that's a different story. But if they live in our midst, they will destroy and uproot our ability to build a Torah society. Again, the Torah emphasizes this again and again, that we have to destroy them so that they will not teach us how not to live a Torah life, that they will not influence us, because the culture, if we live in a society whose culture is antithetical to the values of the Torah, it is very difficult to build a Torah society. It's impossible, at least the Torah seems to say, that if we're living among idolaters who are very, very vocal in their idolatry and very, very proselytizing in their idolatry, that we will be able to withstand that and build a Torah society. So we have to be able to withstand our natural tendency to be wanting to be lenient and merciful to these people, because they're human beings, they're creations of God. Hashem says, no, you have to destroy them, because they will lead you astray. Now, having said all that, and having told you why in certain cases, the Torah demands that we end human life, the Torah still has a very, very important value on human life. And that's what there are 2 parashot in this week's parsha that contrast all that I've said about before on this week's parsha, that focus us in on the importance of human life, okay? One of them is a parsha which is deals with the Arei Miklat, the cities of refuge, which is in chapter 19 of the parsha. We have an entire section dedicated to the 3 cities of refuge, that the cities of refuge are specifically for the accidental murderer. So, and we are told a number of things concerning these cities which help us understand why it is important for a person who does not deserve death to be able to find a refuge from a person who might be out to kill him. So we have a number of statutes regarding this. Firstly, we have to have shalosh arim tav dialach. We have to have 3 cities that have to be equally spaced on either side of the Jordan, being that the Jews we have territory on both sides of the Jordan River at the time of Bnei Yisrael's entry into Eretz Yisrael. We are told that we have to have 3 cities on the east bank of the Jordan, 3 cities on the west bank of the Jordan, each of which is to be specifically set aside as a refuge for a person who accidentally killed somebody else. We are told that we have to make sure that a person who is looking to reach this city can find it. He will not get lost. Very important that the Torah tells us at every crossroads, every intersection of highways, one of the signs has to point to Miklat, has to point you toward the nearest Ir Miklat, the nearest city of refuge. So the purpose of that, again, is Vaya Lanus Shama Kol Rotzeach. Everybody who commits who takes someone else's life is to run to one of these cities. However, not everybody who runs to one of these cities is able to stay there and live there. As it says in Pasuk Daled, there is only, this is the type of murderer or person who has killed somebody who will be able to run there and be able to live. It is somebody who somebody who accidentally killed someone else. He did not have any hatred for this person on a prior basis. There is no history that this person had any intent to kill him or any hatred for this person. And then it gives some examples: a person who is chopping wood and the axe handle flies off from the axe and finds somebody and kills them. He can run to one of these cities and survive. Now, the reason the Torah specifically sets these cities aside, as it tells us in Pasuk Vav, Pen Yerdof Goel Adam Acharei Harotzeach. We are concerned lest the blood avenger, the nearest relative of the person who was accidentally killed, will chase after the person who accidentally kill him. VC go, and if he has a long way to run, he will overtake him. And he will, the blood avenger will now kill the accidental murderer. However, he is not deserving of death. So in the case where someone has committed a crime that is not deserving of death, we have to make every effort to save him from somebody who might kill him. Again, showing us the importance of every single human life, despite the fact that, as I said, we just read about cases where there is capital punishment. Okay, therefore we have to have 3 cities, and this again is an important component of the Jewish justice system, is that we make sure that the appropriate punishment is meted out for the appropriate crime. So in this case, where a person killed somebody accidentally, it's not a capital crime, but however, there is a punishment. The punishment is they have to live in this city of refuge for a period of time until the Kohen Gadol dies, as we learned in Sefer Bamidbar, that the person who has to flee to a city of refuge because he has accidentally killed somebody else has to live there until the death of the Kohen Gadol. And again, it's a critical component in establishing parameters for punishment that are not capital cases. Now, the final case in the Torah that our parsha talks about at the end of the parsha, again, is let me just back up and finish up the case. The accidental murder of Elo Yishafech Dam Nakiber Kerev Artzecha. The purpose of these 3 cities is that innocent blood should not be spilled within Eretz Yisrael. That is a critical component of our being able to survive here. The Arta Adam Anaki B'Yisrael Tovlach. However, when a person is obligated because they have committed a crime that carries a capital punishment, we have an obligation to not allow them to live. So it has to be, again, we have to have a balance between cases where capital punishment is required, and we cannot be merciful on somebody who has committed a crime that carries a capital punishment when the rules are met, versus the person who is the accidental murderer. Now, finally, we have the very interesting case of the unidentified corpse, where we have a corpse that is found and we have no idea how this person met their death. This again is the concluding chapter of this week's parsha, and it is one of perhaps the most interesting parashot in the Torah because of A, what it says, but also because B, what it implies. Okay, so I'm going to read it through in a little bit detail here. This is the last, as I said, the last few psukim of our parsha this week. Tells us the following: Ki yimatzeh chalal, when a dead body is found, that Hashem, in the land that Hashem is giving you to inherit, no fail basodeh. This person is fallen in a field, lo no damihiko, and we have no way of determining who caused the death of who or what caused the death of this person. Again, the parameters of this case are very, very limiting. As it says, ki yimatzeh chalal, it's got to be found in a place between two cities. It's not found within a city. It is not found frequently. This is, again, a not intended to be an everyday occurrence. The Gemara tells us that when dead bodies and murder became an everyday occurrence, this mitzvah was not carried out because it could not be carried out. It can only be carried out when it is an exceptional case, in which case the Torah has a prescribed method for what we are to do in such a case. The first thing is when we find this person, again, the judges and the elders have to go out from the court. They have to go out into the field, see where this person was found. They are required to measure the distance from this corpse that has been found in the field in the middle of nowhere to every city that is within, is the first city they find in every direction. And it's interesting because the Gemara says even if it's very obvious what the nearest city is, we still have to measure to multiple nearest cities to publicize the Talmud seems to imply that the measuring phase here is specifically to publicize the fact that a dead body has been found, in the hope that if anybody knows any information about this dead body, that they will be willing to share it with the court, with the people who are seeking answers to how this person met their end. So therefore, the Gemara seems to imply that's one of the reasons why we have this elaborate procedure of measuring the distance. The elders have to go out and literally measure the distance by measuring rod. They go and they stretch a rope from the dead body and they go and continue to stretch this rope until they find the distance to each of the nearest cities in the different direction. And then they determine which of those is the closest city, because the elders of the closest city, as we're going to see in Pasuk Gimel, have to go out and carry out a procedure in order to, again, publicize this crime or this potential crime that happened, and try to find a perpetrator so that she can be brought to justice. So again, the city that is found to be closest after this measurement, the elders are to take a calf. They're to take a calf that has never been worked and that has never carried a yoke, that has never had to bear a load. Has to be basically a calf that is never been used for any purpose. And we're going to see, as I'm going to try to go through some of the parshanim who try to give us a rationale for why these requirements. But what are they to do? They are to take this eglah, this calf that has not been used, to a nachal eitan. Now, there are two opinions as to what nachal eitan. One is it is a specific wadi. Others say it is any cultivated wadi, but it's a nachal eitan. It has to be an uncultivated area. Asher lo ye'avet bo b'lo yizareh, again, which has not been cultivated or planted for any ever in purposes. V'arfu sham et ha'eglah b'nachal, and the elders are there to literally arfu. They are to break the neck of this calf in this wadi, in this desolate area. They are to basically slaughter the calf, but they slaughter it from the back of its neck rather than with the back of the of an axe, rather than a normal slaughtering knife. At this point, the Torah tells us, "V'nikshu hakohanim b'nei Levi, kivam b'char Hashem l'shartol v'ech b'shem Hashem al pi ha'imiyah koriv v'chol noga." Kohanim have to be present at this ceremony, and they should be close, and they should be watching what is going on. And after this eglah has been killed, in other words, the elders of this city that was found to be closest, they have to wash their hands near this eglah that has now been killed. And after they wash their hands, they have to recite the following. They have to recite the following. Yadenu lo shafchu et hadam hazeh. Our hands that we just washed are basically, we're washing them to show that we are free from the blood. We did not spill the blood of this individual. Ve'einenu lo ra'u, our eyes did not see what happened to him. So we have no idea what happened to him. And then the Kohanim say, Kaper li'amcha Yisrael asher paditu Hashem. Please, Hashem, achieve this through this ceremony. We should achieve atonement, and in the future to not allow innocent blood to be spilled. And the blood of this eglah that they slaughtered should achieve atonement for them. However, the pasuk then concludes with the atot va'er adam anakibi kirbecha. However, you must remember to remove innocent blood, or to clear blood that may be innocent of the innocent from your midst. The way to ensure that Hashem will forgive us is when we carry out justice. That we have to not only do justice, but we have to do what is yashar, what is upright in the eyes of Hashem. Rashi tells us that in this case, what it refers to is that if following this ceremony, as a result of the publicity of the ceremony, we now find out some information about who is responsible for the death of this person, if there's proper evidence as to how this person was killed, again, the perpetrator is brought to death. And that is doing what is righteous and right in the eyes of Hashem. That we don't say, well, since we've already carried out the ceremony, we don't have to now look for the murderer. We continue to look for the perpetrator. And if we find them, we make sure that we carry out justice for this person who has lost their life. Now, it's interesting, Rashi, again, quoting the Midrash, that tells us the whole procedure. Why are the elders the ones who are responsible for this ceremony? And what is the purpose of the ceremony? And what are they saying by saying we're not responsible? Did we really think that the elders of the court are the ones responsible for the death of this individual? Why are they saying we didn't do it? What does it mean that they didn't do it? Ella lo ra'inuhu upatrinuhu below mezonot below levaya. We did not see him pass through our city, even though our city was the closest. We did not see him pass through our city, And if he did pass through our city, we did not allow him to leave without providing proper food to get him to the next station in his journey, and without a proper escort to make sure that he was going to make it to the next city on his journey. That is what they are saying when they're saying we didn't spill the blood. We didn't force him to leave our city under dangerous conditions whereby he could meet an untimely death. So it's interesting. We're not saying that, oh, well, obviously the elders didn't kill him. That seems to be a given. But to say that we are not responsible for his death because he didn't leave our city without proper care requires a very, very high level of participation and involvement of the elders in understanding what's going on in their city. And I think that is exactly what the Torah is really saying when it says, Ki taseh hayashar b'nei Hashem, that we do what is appropriate and upright in the eyes of Hashem. Meaning that we have established a society where a traveler who is traveling through our city will A, be able to find lodging if he wants to lodge overnight. B, will be able to find enough food to make sure that he has ample provisions to get him to the next stage of his journey. And C, also, if he chooses to leave, we will make sure that his leaving is safe. So it almost places a requirement on the city to make sure that not only is the city safe, but the outskirts, the environs, the roads going to the next city are also safe. This is a rather different and unexpected and unexplained, literally in the Torah, doesn't say anything about all of these requirements that we put on the government of a city, that they have a great responsibility for the safety, not just of the inhabitants of the city, but for the safety of travelers passing through and the surrounding area. Because we have to understand that while today we travel at night and think nothing of it, back then, back in the ancient world, traveling at night was a very dangerous proposition, whether because of wild animals between cities, whether because of bandits and other unlawful elements that traveled at night. Traveling at night was a dangerous proposition, and therefore, generally, people only travel during the day. But even traveling during the day could have been dangerous if the proper safeguards weren't kept in place by the governing councils. So this places a very, very high threshold for the elders to meet to be able to make this declaration in this case. And this is exactly the standards that the Torah expects of us in terms of protecting human life and protecting also indirectly human property, and showing the importance of a just and honorable society and removing wrongdoing from the society. So it's a very, very fitting end to the parsha of Shoftim, which talks about society and the rules for an honest and just society. One final thought that I wanted to close with, and this is from Yalkut Shimoni on this parsha. He brings a very interesting, this is a midrash, says the following: why, firstly, is the ceremony done at Nachal Eitan in this desolate wadi? Why do we have to go to an uncultivated area and take this heifer and break its neck? And he says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Shaul, Rabbi Yonatan ben Shaul, Mipnei ma amra Torah havei agla b'nachal. Why did the Torah say we have to go through this whole procedure? Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hashem is telling us, Yavod davar shelo asa pero, this egla, this calf that did not have any, provide any benefit to humankind. It never bore a load. It didn't have any children. It's going to have its life ended in a place that also produces no fruit. It's a desolate area. And through this, perhaps this will achieve atonement This is to bring an atonement for somebody who was not allowed to live out their lives, to be fruitful in their lives, to produce fruit in their lives. So this person who was killed had his life abruptly terminated. Therefore, we have to, by symbolically terminating another life in the same way, we hope that Hashem will forgive us. Now, the Yalkut doesn't end with that. He ends with a very interesting comment here. My payrot, what are the payrot that we're talking about that this person who died prematurely was not able to achieve? Ilema priya revia, if you say it was having children, well, maybe the person already had children. Maybe he had a whole family. Maybe it was somebody who was beyond procreative age. Elami ato azoken, if he was old, or he was a saris, perhaps he was somebody who was sterile, then maybe hachinami de lo arfina, we wouldn't perform this procedure if this person was already old and was beyond reproductive age. And the answer is no. Ella mitzvot. That as long as a person is alive, he can still perform mitzvot. He can still be a productive member of a mitzvah society. And that is what we are mourning or trying to achieve atonement for. The fact that this person's potential achievements beyond having children is not the only thing. That's an important achievement, but that's not the only thing that we achieve in life. And I think that specifically as we stand at the beginning of month of Elul, we're getting ready to prepare for the Chagim. This concept that we are here primarily, our primary purpose here is to perform mitzvot, to help build a Torah society, a society that lives on the principles of tzedek, mishpat that we talked about, is the way this parsha ends. And it is really a reminder to all of us that as we begin our journey once again to our annual spiritual reckoning, spiritual accounting that we do every year on Rosh Hashanah, that we should be thinking about how can we contribute not just to our families, but to society, to helping build a more just and a more equitable and a more upright society wherever we may find ourselves, at whatever level that may be. If that level is our family or our community or our city, or beyond that, our country, and perhaps beyond that, the world. And when we're able to have that impact in smaller groups, and each of those small groups join together and coalesce, then we are doing exactly what the parsha expects us to do, what Hashem expects us to do, of helping to further and to build a just Torah society. And when we do that, we are sure that Hashem will hear our tefillot, bless us with a year of peace, health, peace, prosperity, and a year we should be zocheh to gula shleimim meher yameinu. Thank you all, and I now open it up for questions, comments, feedback. So if you're on mute, unmute yourself, and if you have any questions or comments, please.
Amen.
Anybody? Okay. If not, thank you all for joining. Have a good rest of the week. Bezrat Hashem, we will see you next week, same time, and have a good week.
You too.
Chodesh Tov, and good week. Bye-bye.
Have a good week.